In the last 12 and a half years, spanning the period of 2010 to the first half of 2022, Nigeria's power grid suffered at least 222 partial and total collapses. This is the analysis of industry data, mostly from the Nigerian Electricity Regulatory Commission, NERC, has shown. To reduce the rate of grid failures, Minister of Power, Abubakar Aliyu, said the federal government will fast-track the purchase and installation of a supervisory control and data acquisition SCADA system. However, a study jointly published in March by Nemeka Modi, the University of Queensland, and Ogeneruno Demodeke of the University of Port Harcourt estimated that in sub-Saharan Africa, every 1% increase in power outages have been associated with a 2.86% decrease in gross domestic product (GDP). This translates to a loss of 28 billion in GDP, according to the academics. While information relating to the crashes were now officially available from September 21 to June 2022, a 12-year, 9-month review of NERC data covering from 2010 to September 2021 showed that 216 crashes happened during that period. But from independently sourced information between the last quarter of 2021 and June this year, it was gathered that about 6 cases of such total collapse had been publicly reported, taking the figure to 222 between 2010 to June 2022. Alarming, Tundu. Alarming.
Mortifying. It's a complete embarrassment. You said $28 billion in that report. The IMF puts that figure at $29 billion lost to Nigeria annually because of our power challenges. Now, there's been a plethora of reasons given for this incessant collapse that we see, vandalism being one of the gas pipelines, gas constraints, I have a list here, water management challenges, general system imbalance, whatever that means. Because we've had so many collapses, we actually had it happen twice in 2 months, in March and April. So twice in quick succession in 2 months. It's completely embarrassing. But what is actually, it's not actually hopeful, it's actually more damning, is that in 2020, none of this happened. Why? Because there was close-up monitoring and adherence to the grid code. The problem clearly is that that grid code and the monitoring is not up to par. It's not being enforced. And this, for me, is just a microcosm of everything that we go through in this country. Firstly, why do we have this centralized power grid? Why do we have our centralized system of government? Why do we have all these wonderful laws like our grid code that are not enforced? It just says just the way the whole country is run and exactly what it's costing us, which is a lot. So really, there have been calls for years to decentralize this one power grid, have mini grids. We need to move on that urgently. And just in every way, restructuring, whether it's in the power sector, whether it's governance at all levels, that's just really what we need in this country.
I mean, Tundu is quite very damning, like you said, very sad. Just imagine 28 billion shaved off our GDP, or 29 billion, like you said, the IMF said, shaved off our GDP just like that. And it is very damning because we had electricity first in Nigeria in the late 1800s. In fact, straight out of the bat, we had big generators churning out electricity. We had Ijorabi power station in 1927. So 27, we had a big power plant like Ijora. And since then, it's been a slippery slope for us. We have not come back from it, having power provided for people as at when they need it. It is so sad that this same country where we had NESCO is an independent power plant in Jos that was built in the 1920s, providing power to the tin-making factories in Jos. We cannot still provide power. And what's the problem? Largely the grid. There's the problem of supply. Yes, independent, different power stations across the country. Sapele and the likes, Ugeli, built by Star Lava, bought over, creating feedstock, putting out power. The fact that those power stations are not performing optimally. For instance, Egbe is not hitting all the great miles it needs to hit as regards megawatts of power and the likes. But when you even churn out the power, the grid system to carry it is almost problematic. We run a 33,000 kVA grid here, or 330 kV, and we also run a frequency, of distortion and disturbance of about 50 hertz. So when you have distortion in that frequency on the grid, then the thing shuts down automatically. And because we are taking power from various stations, and we don't have a grid system that can support all of that power. I'm sad that we read in the report that the ministry or the minister is just talking about SCADA in 2022. Are you kidding me? So you don't have a software. SCADA is just a software. It's a supervisory monitoring system set up in place to be able to say, okay, I'm seeing what every substation is providing, how they are optimally performing, and you have a big dashboard. So if we are just talking about SCADA now, at this point in time, it shows we have dropped the ball so many times in this country. And like you said, it's because we don't even have something like SCADA that we have something like a grid code that people have not followed over the years. And because we have not followed the grid code, we've dropped the ball. They are now moved back to the project of Siemens. Siemens, with the federal government, after all the hullabaloo about that, federal government finally paid counterpart fund of about 100 million for that. How long is that project going to come before it kicks into the system? It's in phases. I think the first phase is a couple of years down the line, then the next phase, then the third phase. Also, the fact that there are some power lines that have problems, that are very problematic. And that goes back to the great point you made about mini-grid. Because we still have to transfer this power across, vegetation and the likes and all of that. We have to clear, we have to trace the lines. But if we have smaller grids, that you have independent stations here and there, they can supply areas closer to them. Not everybody needs to go to that long, tall grid that you now need to carry over 33,000 kVA, and when there are distortions, there are distortions. There's also a problem about some of the lines being old and moribund. There's also the problem, like you said, about the perennial feedstock problem, which they like to say, water imbalance. Because obviously for those hydropower plants, water is a feedstock. But it's problematic that we have a lot of gas, we have coal, we can't churn out power, and we have a moribund grid system that is not working. And to add insult to injury, we are just installing a software that will be able to monitor substation and power output called SCADA. And we make it feel like it's a big deal. We need to do more because the economy keeps suffering in this country because of power outages. And I hope that this independent report, they will take it very strongly because this is showing to them how it's going. And now at least we know that it's not when they report a total grid failure. There are many grid failures that never get reported. That is always an internal circle. All right, we'd like to say a very big thank you to all of you. That's all on News Headline. We'll take a short break. And when we return, we'll have Rotus, we'll have Michael to give us updates on Africa global business activities. Stay with us.
Welcome back to the morning show here on Arise News. For Global Business Update, Michael Wilson joins us now from London. Good morning, Michael.
Good morning. A fairly mixed start as far as Asia-Pacific stocks are concerned this morning. China achieving huge export data, which I'll go through later on. Tech stocks in Hong Kong pulling the broader index a little lower this morning. Alibaba down about 4%. Hong Kong's Cathay Pacific, though, jumped almost 2.5% after the authorities there announced that quarantine for travellers could be reduced to 3 days from 7. The Australia not doing too badly either. But the big one, really, China's exports, which are holding up despite reduced demand through the rest of the world, offering an encouraging, as they put it, boost to the economy after that COVID-induced slump. A global factory survey confirming that as far as their internal figures are concerned about exports. Also, their coal imports in July jumped as well. So that's actually showing a different way of producing power and to provide for the peak summer electricity demand. China has also defended ditching the talks with the United States over Taiwan and the visit of Nancy Pelosi there, saying Washington must bear serious consequences. Her visit there last week, of course, infuriated China. There were all sorts of ballistic missile launches and military drills and the rest of it around, and it's still very tense around the Taiwan Strait. As far as India is concerned, here's an interesting one. Jaguar Land Rover, which is owned by Tata, is to buy Ford plants in India, in the Gujarat state, for $91.5 million. It comes really as Tata moves to increase vehicle production around the world. Ford stopped production in India about a year ago. Let's take a look at what's happening in the United States. Well, of course, no trading over the weekend there, and we await the opening of their markets there. But those jobs figures on Friday were absolutely stellar. Stock futures actually a little changed this morning, but the overnight, what's happening really is all about Friday and the massive increase there. What they're feeling rather curiously, and is that maybe the US economy now with this adding these sort of jobs is strong enough to take an even bigger hike in interest rates, and maybe they're looking at 75 basis points, 0.75% rise next time around. The US Senate has passed a crucial Biden economic package. This is called the Inflation Reduction Act. It still has to go through the House of Representatives, but amongst other things, it's creating more jobs in greener facing infrastructure, which is good for the economy, lower prescription charges, and a minimum 15% tax charge on large corporates. That didn't go down very well with the Republicans, and you can imagine. So this was passed by 51 votes to 50, the casting vote coming from Kamala Harris, the deputy president of the United States. ECB, we talked a little bit about how they're going to try to shield some of the weaker economies, some of those which are more exposed to debt, from the winding down of their QE program. And so far, Italy, Spain, and Greek markets have received about 87 billion euros to help them. Again, we'll be looking at how that actually works over the next few weeks, presumably. And to the UK, and the Conservative frontrunner, who's Liz Truss, at the moment she's under extreme pressure now to help the cost of living. What are her proposals? The Sunak campaign. Her main rival, Rishi Sunak, the ex-chancellor, is saying that actually the tax cuts that she's proposing, in inverted commas, don't touch the sides of poorer families. And people are actually, as far as the cost of living crisis is concerned, figures from the post office, which deals with a lot of cash transactions, are actually showing that people are turning to cash away from plastic, literally possibly counting the pennies of the cost of living crisis. Let's hope they are costing, because it's very easy to spend on plastic, less easy to spend when it's actually loosening the cash in my pocket. And finally, oil has had a rather choppy start to the week. Now, some big figures coming out during the week. We've got the beginnings of the continuation of the Iran nuclear talks. The U.S. administration will be, the U.S. Energy Information Commission administration will be offering its short-term outlook on Tuesday. We get a monthly snapshot on Thursday from OPEC. So really, until we get a firmer idea of where the oil markets are going, what the demand and supply calculation is, then things will remain relatively choppy. That is the global view this morning.
Thank you, Michael. What are your thoughts on the latest spat between Liz Truss and Rishi Sunak? Because she told the Financial Times over the weekend that she is averse to financial handouts to help families during the winter and is sticking to her guns about tax cuts. And Rishi Sunak obviously came out and criticized that. But is that a bit of a false dichotomy? Since both tax cuts and handouts, there's no such thing as public money, essentially. It's taxpayers' money. So it's really giving them back their own money. What do you make of that? And Gordon Brown saying there should be daily COBRA meetings about this cost of living crisis. Do you think that's a practicable idea and will actually make much of a difference?
I'm not sure that COBRA meetings will actually make much of a difference. I mean, the reasons for this are not just about the UK economy, as you know, but they're about the global economy as well. I don't really see, unless there are specific directions of help or tax cuts or some kind of mechanisms to make things easier for people. Yeah, I mean, if you have daily COBRA meetings, it certainly pushes it up the what's important kind of menu as far as government's concerned. Whether it actually will achieve anything, I'm sceptical like you are. And yes, of course, I mean, I agree with you. If we're looking at, a basic pot of money, and again, it's very, very difficult to work out exactly what that is. You're taking from one, you're giving help to another. I think what Liz Truss is saying, and again, I mean, it's down to the Conservative Party members to be voting for whom they prefer, though she's in the lead at the moment. She seems to be saying that, jam tomorrow. Sunak, generally speaking, appears to be saying, well, let's get inflation under control, and then we can think about tax cuts. So really, that's where we are right now, fundamentally divided on the not so much the amount, but the actual timetable of when help might be given. And I think if you can boil it down to anything, it's when you think you should be doing it. Should you be acting right now, or should you be controlling inflation and then acting? That seems to be dividing the two of them at the moment. But they could their teams are no doubt working overtime to come up with different kind of things. I mean, some of us truly wishing this all could be over and somebody at least should be governing the country, which clearly isn't happening at the moment.
I mean, Michael, that's a sad reality, and that's why we say politicians should come up straight. Obviously, the half-truths and the popularity contest and the lies as it is were about economic reality that Truss has been telling has come home to roost with her, because obviously she didn't see that question coming in the Financial Times interview as regards the cost of living crisis, and that's why she balked, because she had no answer. The best way to settle out the cost of living crisis, we all know economically, is to give handouts. You still need to put that helicopter money in the hands of people. And Rishi told that line, but she struggled. But also, I want to talk about what is happening in America that relates to what is happening in the UK. To be able to hedge against inflation, President Joe Biden finally pushed a bill across as regards put money in the hands of people, $440 billion. Some people, some big businesses are arguing, and their lobbyists are arguing, that this will only drive up their own taxes and it's not good for the economy. Some are saying it will not do anything as regards to inflation. What's the conversation around this?
I think the conversation is exactly as you say, and I think you're absolutely right, that what we're seeing here is a political package, and he was dying for something to be passed before the midterm elections in November, and this is it. But you can see how close the voting was on it. I mean, it was 50 to 51, and the casting vote was cast by the Vice President of the United States. So that's how close it was. I think the only difference really everybody, most countries are facing this kind of problem, but it does seem that if you believe those jobs figures from the United States on Friday, which were absolutely stellar, weren't they? I mean, they were much more than people had been expecting. If you believe that, and you believe those figures are strong, then you'd sort of believe that the economy is strong enough to resist another 0.75% rise in interest rates to get buckled down on inflation. I don't think that anybody, apart from, with the one example maybe of Japan, which would like a bit of inflation because it would show that the economy is at least coming out of deflation there. But I think that everybody mostly agrees that inflation is a destructive force. Sure, it makes your savings worth a bit more, makes you a bit less, but it actually tends to erode everything. And I think until you have that under control, and here's, I think, really the important thing. I think we will be reporting next year that inflation is down, but remember, it's only the measure of inflation, which is the increase in the rate of price increases. It's not really how expensive things are. So inflation actually denudes and reduces what you actually earn, and what you actually earn is as far as your salary and what you can actually spend is concerned, but prices will still keep rising. I don't think there's any question about that at all. And as far as the larger global geopolitical concerns are concerned, I can see no immediate stop to that. So I'm afraid that it's a bit like rearranging the old deck chairs, isn't it, really?
Rearranging the deck chairs on the Titanic. Wow. Thank you, Mr. Wilson. We'll take a short break now. When we're back, we'll have our dependable Rosa Sadiri here to give us African business updates. Welcome back to the morning show here on the Rise News. Our dependable Rosa Sadiri is here to give us an African business update. Good morning, Rotus.
Good morning, Tundu. Good morning, Rufai. Good morning to all our viewers. Yeah, we begin where we left off on Friday with the currency, the economic, the EFCC, Financial Crimes Commission, saying that they're going to crack down on speculators. They apparently had a meeting with some BDCs saying they've got data on individuals who are hoarding foreign exchange for the purpose of speculation. We have seen the parallel market rates come down to about 660 now. Still waiting to get an update on rates. That was as of Friday, so we're waiting to get an update on rates as of today. So has the currency appreciated because the EFCC is cracking down, or the panic buying that we saw last week is starting to ease? We're in August, we've still got people traveling, we've still got schools that are going to start up late August, in mid-September. So there's also that, movement demand to get foreign exchange to pay for school fees, as well as, travel fare for folks that are still vacationing. So there is going to still be, I guess, some pent-up demand for foreign exchange for this early part of the third quarter. But they've made it a priority. The EFCC has made it a priority that speculators need to be addressed. But as we've talked about several times on the program, the headwinds that are facing the naira are not just speculators. It's also the oil theft that is reducing our revenues and not allowing us to defend the currency. It's also our import demand, our taste for foreign products. It's also the strengthening dollar, which is appreciating because of the rate hikes that are happening in the United States. So another one, most recently with the Fed. You've got money supply, the amount of money supply in the system right now that is also having an impact. So there's a myriad of issues that are being faced here. In fact, speaking of which, if we move on to our next topic, the NECA, Employment Consultative Association, they're saying that the federal government should prioritize foreign exchange to the manufacturing sector and all the other productive sectors of the economy. Their Director General was saying that also refineries have to be fixed in order for us to save on the amount of foreign exchange that's being used to import refined petroleum, and that the most productive sectors are the ones that should be prioritized for foreign exchange. But if you do that, there's also the risk of round tripping. There's the risk of giving these sectors FX at the official rates of about 424, 425, and that being now taken to the parallel market. So you've got to watch for that. So I think, look, there's still the emphasis on improving exports in order for us to be able to increase supply. That's what we're facing now. It just comes down to a supply issue. And until you address that, you will still have bodies like the NECA and other outfits talking about you allocate forex here. Everybody needs it, right? It's not just the manufacturing sector. The aviation sector needs it. Other sectors need it as well. So there's still that issue that it's the supply. That's what we're facing. To Niger States, the Governor Bello, Abubakar Bello, Sani Bello, says that insecurity is impacting investment in his states, which I guess that's not a new phenomenon. We've seen how investment has dwindled coming into the nation, but he's one of the governors that's speaking up. Last week we saw Sam Olotom in Benue State and their deployments. We carried it live of the security outfits that they have put out there, which are supposed to quell insecurity. And perhaps other states will pick this up, where they're going to train individuals to try to tamper down. But we've talked about the impact of insecurity, and now you've got a governor coming out of to say that this is how it is impacting the state. And it's not just internally generated revenue. They've got to get money coming in from out of the country in order to boost a number of issues, from paying salaries to infrastructure, so on and so forth. Finally, we wrap up with Kenya. Kenyans are going to be going to the polls tomorrow, and they will be picking a new president. We've got 4 individuals. Yeah, no, it's the 9th. It's tomorrow. Yeah, okay. It's tomorrow. So at the top left, you've got Raila Odinga, former prime minister, who is being backed by President Kenyatta. Says he wants to transfer, I think, $50 every month to poor households. He wants to ease the debt burden of Kenyans. To the right, so top right in the red tie, William Ruto, deputy president, calling himself a hustler, likes to tout his rags to riches story. He says that he wants to focus on farming, and he wants to invest billions in the agricultural sector, which employs about 40% of the labor force in Kenya. And he says he wants to follow a bottom-up economic model that seeks to channel funds into sectors that have the potential to generate the most jobs. So that's Mr. William Ruto to the right of your screen. Bottom left is a very interesting character, George Wajakoya. He's a law professor, former police officer. And, you know, in these elections, you always got one very eccentric individual.
That's the ganja one.
Yeah, he wants to legalize marijuana. He says he wants to boost snake farming, export dog meat and hyena testicles. And he believes that that will improve the exports of Kenya. And then your bottom right, there's got to be a pastor, right? There's got to be at least one pastor there. At the bottom right of your screen, Mr. David Morwari, lawyer and a pastor. He says that his main focus is to return about $125 billion of wealth that's been stashed overseas back to Kenyans. But your top two, Odinga and at the top, and the Ruto at the top left and top right, I think those are the two. So we'll, you know, hopefully there's no runoff. I mean, we'll see how things turn out by the early Wednesday. We should know, maybe late Tuesday.
Looking forward to it.
Yeah.
As for the hustler and all his street cred and what have you, how he came up the hard way, he's also been criticized exactly like the rest of them for just the profligacy of their campaigns at a time where your average Kenyan is really struggling. And I thought, sounds terribly familiar.
Exactly.
We haven't really kicked off our presidential campaign yet, not until the end of September. But we saw some really appalling scenes, didn't we, during the presidential primaries and the dollarization of that process. I wonder where EFCC was with now this sudden clampdown that's going on. Where were they when delegates were being paid, you know, squillions of dollars? I do wish that EFCC's activities were sort of less politicized and more, we could trust more, because that was really blatant.
Oh, of course.
And
so the rate moved during that period. It moved.
Yes, and what happened then?
Exactly,
Nothing.
right.
So I'm really not impressed.
Yeah, they could do better.
I mean, like you said, Tundu, you see, we keep playing around with our problems. We know our problems, but we're not ready to solve them as a nation. Maybe the day we're ready to solve them, or we have leaders that are ready to solve them, we'll move forward. You hit the nail on the head. We know what caused the rise in this dollar was the political party primaries.
Of course.
From 585 rotus, from 585, it went to over 600 in the weekend. They mopped up so much dollar that at a point, BDCs were selling fake dollar to them. There were delegates now that got fake dollar. We all know the story. And you know, that thing affected businesses. I was talking to a business owner yesterday. He deals in tech. Then his business was trying to buy some software for 1 million US. The client had paid 585 million naira to be able to buy 1 million US to be able to purchase USD. Rotus, they held the money. All of a sudden, the rate went up to 610, thereabouts. Guess the shortfall they had.
Yeah, the difference between the 585.
100 million naira. They lost 100 million naira worth in one transaction because of how politicians mopped up dollar. The thing affected the business so much that people had to start leaving the business, and guess they were going abroad. They were taking the next route, the Japa route. So you can see how the activities of politicians affect just a small struggling business that wants to provide jobs, when most of these politicians are not providing jobs. So we know the problem, and we're just beating around the bush with this who are we targeting now?
Performative clampdowns.
Clampdown.
Really.
Speculators.
We're targeting speculators. At first we said the website was our problem with USD. The website has gone now. The dollar problem continues. Now we're targeting the real people, the real politicians. You can't go after them because of political consideration. So who are we deceiving? And we keep deceiving ourselves. And it even goes back to that talk about giving. And I like the point you made, Rotus, that dollar, everybody needs dollar. Make the economy strong in such a way that we can get imports, we can get inflow of dollar by selling our own products here, by being productive. Because even when you give the manufacturer, we have copious stories of how manufacturers to now do round tripping. They will leave their manufacturing, shut down their plants, they will be taking profits on dollars. We know people that have done it. You see, one of the greatest problems in this country that roots is a lot of Nigerians don't love Nigeria. And that's the greatest problem. And going back to Kenya, I think the problem of Africa is across board. Look at Raila Odinga. At the age of 77, you've been running all this while. You ran against the incumbent president, Kenyatta. You people had the deal. He wants to put you in power. Look at the other man, Ruto. 55, he calls himself a hustler. Where there are corruption allegations against him, we all know the Kenyan people know how it rose to the top. So look at
It was street cred.
and they call it street cred. So these are people that didn't have anything before they got into government. Look at how they've become. They rose to the top. He has one of the biggest hotels chain in Kenya.
Yeah,
as
they're
he
all
speak.
big businesses.
Big businesses.
Yeah.
So look at them. So Kenya now has to choose between the best of two evils. While the people kept on suffering. And you see, they don't think about the people. It's just, okay, social investment program that they are still going to use corrupt means to round trip at a point in time. And they've not been able to create real industry for the Kenyan people. Rotus, in the 70s, the highest employer of labor in Kenya, guess what? Was Bata, the shoemaker.
Okay.
All their leaders, political heads, had Bata shoe franchises in Kenya in the 70s. Till then, since Bata has gone down and the shoemaker is not that popular, they've not been able to create real industries where Kenyans can work. So year on year, it's just about these politicians. And that's why we keep asking, when will Africa be free?
Right.
It's just a sad reality what Africa has become.
And you also
Wish them
talked
well.
about Niger State. I recall
Yeah,
even on this show seeing analysts talking about how, security is a problem. This was years ago.
Yeah.
Security is a problem, but when businesses want to invest, they will. They'll also just factor in providing their own security. A few short years later, you cannot make that case convincingly anywhere. Look what even happened in Kogi State with that ceramics factory with the Indian workers that were, one person was killed and some were abducted.
Yeah.
So there is no budget for providing your own security anymore. The shortest route is just not to invest, period. And that's what the governor is lamenting about. So it all just boils down to what exactly is the government doing to provide a safe, healthy, enabling environment for Nigerians, so you don't have to, get on the next plane and never come back.
If you can get a flight.
That
If you don't
exactly,
have to-
because
that's-
now
get a
that's
flight
another
for it.
issue. That's
By
another
the way,
issue.
I
Trying to
told
get
you we were supposed to interview the president of the Bureau de Change. Yeah, his flight was cancelled. So he had to go by road. So hopefully we'll have him this week.
Oh, so he's going by road.
I think it was from Sokoto to Kano or
Hope
so.
he's
So
going with police escorts.
state of our nation.